What's up, y'all? It's time to remap your mind and so we can create a life you design. I am Dr. Maisha, and I'm back for another episode with my friend and colleague, Dr. Omolara Uwemedimo. And she is the owner of Melanin Medicine and Motherhood, but she got me with these tongue twists today, all the alliteration.
Girl, if you know me.
I was practicing beforehand and I still got a little tongue twisted, but it's all good. I'm so excited because, most of you all who are listening may know that I have another podcast, Next Level Physicians, and Dr. Omolara has been on that podcast. I've been on her podcast. We talk, and I love her platform. And I was like, as soon as I started this podcast, I was like, yo, you have got to come on and chat about the empowerment of Black women. So that's what we're talking about today. But first, let me welcome Dr. Omolara to the show. What's up, my sister?
Thank you. I feel so special. Awesome.
You are.
It's awesome to be here. Thank you so much. I'm really excited about this new direction that you're taking, and I think it's so needed, as you know. And so super happy to be on here and to chat about being powerful, being authentic, and all of the stuff that's wrapped up around that.
Yeah. So I want the audience to kind of know who you are and what you stand for. So just kind of tell us about yourself.
Yeah, so I am a board certified pediatrician and really had a lot of experience, particularly as a global health physician, which I think informed a lot of my insights around justice and being kind of, when I think about the theme of my life, it's always been about justice. And so a lot of my work was outside of this country in Sub-Saharan Africa, the Caribbean. And then when I came back, I actually did a lot more work in trying to build kind of global health here in the US. So immigration, working with marginalized populations. And I was doing all the things. I was an academic pediatrician, so I was seeing patients, doing advocacy, researching, educating, MPH school. And then I burnt out. Everyone could see that coming. Probably they could see the breadcrumbs to that. And I burned out. And that was in 2018. And then in 2019, about 6 months later, I actually ended up not being able to walk, and I couldn't, and I didn't know why until about 4 days later, I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. And during that time, I was told that if I did not figure out how to de-stress my life, that I would continue to have multiple exacerbations and probably lose the ability to walk completely. And so that was a wake-up call. And through that, what I really focused on and tried to understand was kind of, why am I here? I'm doing all of these things for everyone else and the validation. I'm a doctor, I'm teaching and all, but what is it that brings me joy? And when I sat there, I really understood that at this point of my life, what brings me joy was really trying to empower other women to not follow that same path that I think is kind of that the strong Black woman trope that we a lot of times fit ourselves into, and then potentially end up with some mental health or physical health crisis. So I developed Melanin Medicine Motherhood as an empowerment freedom space, I like to say, not a safe space or a brave space. I want to be free, and I want other women to be free. And so we developed this. It initially started with a Facebook group, then a podcast, and now it's a coaching company. And we also have a membership community. And so it's really just grows. And I just wait for God to just tell me what we doing next? Because clearly I'm not running this ship. You are. So I don't know what else is up in the works, but what we have been able to is really create a beautiful community. We have about 1,300 plus women in our Facebook group, and about 45 women in our smaller membership community. So we're super excited, and thank you so much.
Oh yeah, no, I love that. And I think what I love so much is that you're creating community for us to come together and empower each other. Because I think that there has been a lot of individualism in our culture as we've tried to succeed, right? And I think we're coming to a point in time, you know, in the last year, especially, but in the last few years where we're starting to realize that we really truly are better together. And, you know, I say this proverb all the time: if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, to go together. That's my favorite African proverb ever. and, and so that's what you're doing.
Yeah, and I believe like it's ancestral, right? My parents are Nigerian, and just in terms of going back and forth, remembering kind of like the times when we'd like be in the village or whatever, and in the area, and you would see like all of us playing around, and like, you know, you couldn't see your mom, but you knew she was there. You saw somebody's mom, and all of them were basically together, kind of both releasing and pouring like simultaneously. And I think that's extremely important. And for us ancestrally, I think we're a collectivist people, which a lot of times is why there's this tension in so many of the spaces that we sit in, because I think they just don't feel natural to the core of who we are and how we truly want to be. And so, yeah,
it's interesting because even for myself growing up, and I grew up in Alabama, so, you know, I didn't, you know.
I grew up in Brooklyn, by the way, just so everyone knows. I did not grow up in Nigeria. Okay.
So my street, on my street, it was like everybody was connected to my mom, right? I used to ride my bike down the street, and I'd go to the McCormick's house and play with Dana and Rachel, and then, you know, they knew that if anything was going down, and I knew that if anything was going down, guess who would find out? You know, I'd be riding down the street, and there'd be neighbors like sitting on the porch. Like, it really was the community, you know, raised a child. So I knew that I felt safe in the community, right, on my street, and even on the next street. You know, a couple of streets beyond, people knew where I lived. People knew whose child I was, and I think that in our society has been very much lost. And of course, you know, there are reasons why it has been lost, but also I think as time has gone on, and as some of the things that we thought we have come so far around, i.e., race, we're starting to be less comfortable with this whole idea of communal parenting, communal, you know, just community in general. And then you know, what's interesting, and, you know, I'm going to touch on it, we can get into it, is you know, that now I'm getting into this realm of conscious anti-racism. I'm doing these trainings. And as I learn more about like the symptoms of white supremacy culture, I'm learning that some of the things that we've adopted is really basically internalized racism, you know? And so it's just interesting how now we have to come back to that community, because one of the symptoms of white supremacy is individualism. And I did not even know that.
Correct. Capitalism. I mean, if you want to like really go into this, right? So there's Womanist Theology, which is like a really important space, I think, that feeds me particularly, that was first coined by Alice Walker, and the Combahee River Collective, which I think really set up the stage around this idea that not only are you collective, but thinking about the fact that there's racism and sexism, of course, but then the idea of like capitalism and how the structures actually are born on the fact that if we as Black women are undervalued and underpaid, that is what makes the system go, right? So I can hire one Black woman for something that would allow me to actually save money, and not hire two people, and not hire a man, and a lot of that allows, I also talk about how potentially sometimes that whole strong Black woman trope, which has three components, right? The emotional suppression, the uber independence, no help necessary, and the like constant caregiving to ourselves, self-sacrificing caregiving. When we operate like that, we can produce and produce and produce. And also when we see that we're not being valued, or we see that something's amiss, we don't say anything because we've been malaligned to that. If we say something, we're angry, hostile. And
Right.
so it's like this perfect storm where when we stay back and when we stay in and try to stay comfortable, we actually allow for those systems of oppression to just continue and continue unscathed.
Absolutely.
And so I think the work that you're doing around remapping our mind and helping us to remember that, no, I don't have to work twice as hard, like to get half it. Look, I'm like trying to start to unlearn some of these things are really important. And that's like your specialty. So
Well, like you said, it not only does it take a community inside of family, it takes a community inside of this work. And, things that I'm learning just around some of the basic things that we do, like this perfectionism, that is something that is, a key component, I think, too, of the strong Black woman narrative is this premise that we have to do it right all the time. But that's an internalized white supremacist cultural principle. And I think when we start to get into these spaces where, like you said, a white person can hire one Black woman to do the work of multiple people,
Yeah.
right? That's free emotional labor, which we know has been taught. That's something way back in slavery and before, right? So free emotional labor, and then we're competing with each other for even a job that's supposed to be a job of many, but it's a job of one. So then therein lies the individualism. We're learning and internalizing these various symptoms that are inherited. They're not even ours. And I think one of the things to begin to dismantle unconsciously are these things, are this symptom of perfectionism, are the symptom of individualism, are the symptom of, either or thinking, right? Either or, there's either this or that. No, that's a NLP principle that we teach all the time, is get rid of the either or, right? And begin to use and then you start to really see new pathways for possibilities working together, right? And so
I love it.
that's why I love what you do and bringing together community. Look, we're over here like, that's why I love what you do. That's why I love what you do. That's it. We gotta, this is such a togetherness principle, right?
Yeah, yesterday we were so in our community we have book clubs, we have guest master classes, and we had our book club. We just finished the book Too Heavy a Yoke, Black Women and the Burden of Strength, which Lord, I was just like, oh my God, what have you done to me, book? But at the end she talks a lot about a 12-step recovery process. And it makes you, although at first you're like, what? It makes you realize kind of how similar this addiction to showing up with this mask, and understandably so, because of the protection that we feel like we need to have, right? But understanding how that leads to all of the detrimental health effects, the same way alcohol and the addiction to alcohol leads to that, and how it literally is this, she talks about kind of almost like Alcoholics Anonymous, how there's this ongoing need to sit in those communities to release, and knowing you're going to relapse, and knowing that you're going to not say no to the things you need to say no to. You're going to hold in, you're going to overcommit, you're going to take away other people's responsibility to do their responsibility and do it for them. And you're also going to potentially insinuate this in other women unconsciously, including our daughters, right? And so understanding that and knowing that I'm gonna need a place to go back to after I've been sober a little bit, and go back to and be like, okay, I fell off the wagon again, this is what I'm doing, okay, help me out, how can I how can I say no, how can I stop this? And that, I think, was when I realized that although I love coaching and I love strategy, I would say I do more strategy than coaching. I'm just built that way. But I really was like, one of the women who was in my coaching program, it's so funny. Now I'm thinking about this. It was, when I did it, it was 3 months. Now it's a 12-month program. But she came out, and about a month later, she was like, "Oh, Omolara, I need to talk to you. I'm in withdrawal." That was the exact word that she said. And now I'm hearing it and I'm like, oh my gosh, but I think it's the same thing about understanding this is a process that is not finite.
Right.
It's something that we always get confronted by these messages. Our children get confronted by it, and we need to have a space where we can hash it out and recover.
Absolutely. And I'm very familiar with the recovery, the 12 steps of recovery. Love them. And one of the things I love about them is that it is a journey. And the cliche saying, it's about the journey, not the destination. But really, it's kind of true, right? These steps can reconnect you to who you are, reconnect you to intuition, reconnect you to something bigger than yourself, which some call higher power, people call whatever they call, right? Power bigger than yourself. And I think that when we begin to reconnect to ourselves as Black women and Black men too, right? But as we begin to truly reconnect to who we are in the present and ancestrally, and how great we are, and how it used to be with the cultural community, the family, the family, the play family, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then we can begin to lean on each other in these instances where we're sobering up and there's relapse, right? And there's safety inside of the spaces to be able to call when you're having a moment, whether it's a mom moment or a dad moment or a business moment or a personal emotional moment or a loss moment or even a success moment and a celebration moment. We can go to a community that's safe to celebrate and not be side-eyed, right?
Correct.
Not be like, oh, like feel like there's some kind of competition. So I think that in going through these processes together, whether it's 12 steps or whether it's 14 steps or 6 steps, as long as we're doing it as a community, I think then we are empowering each other. And I think that's what we need the most right now.
Yeah, there's a huge piece to this that is really important in terms of kind of, when I think about the mindset. One thing that we talked about in this challenge that I did was we talked a bit about letting go of the control, right? And understanding that like many of the women that I talk to are very steeped in terms of Christian faith and like believing God, and and then we talk about how that idea of of sitting in that strong Black woman of I got it, I'll do it, I got this, and how that completely is in conflict with your idea of trusting God. Like, so it's like this whole and we start to understand that also the letting go of control, and like you said, this idea that I'm going to fall off and I'm still a good person, or the perfection piece, and starting to say, you know what, do I have to show up this way in order for people to recognize my value? I think the way that I really ran through life, a lot of the accomplishments I had were things that gave me joy, but also were very steeped in the validity of, okay, I checked that off. Okay, I'm good, right? I'm a great person, right? Okay, I did this. Okay, I'm a great person, right? And kind of adding to that, and instead of checking in and saying, okay, what is it that I've done all these good things, right? But I've not allowed myself to be great at anything because I've really just filled it up with all of these good things that are other people's priorities.
Right. And I think that we got to start to look at, well, what are our own values inside of that? Like, and we have been, and I can speak for our industry, and I know that it's similar in other sister and brother industries like law and, some high corporate stuff, is that our values get beat out of us during our training, you know, because we
Yes.
get pulled into this is the way it's supposed to be, our way or the highway, right? And so then we get disconnected internally from not only our emotions, right? Because of course, as Black women, any emotion expressed as angry, other than happiness, is angry Black woman, right? So we get
Correct.
disconnected from our emotions, which sometimes we get connected from even being able to feel our emotions. So it becomes straight numbness. But also, in doing that, we get disconnected from the value system. What do we truly hold important to us? And we start to make other things that are not, we instinctively know are not that important. We start to make them important to us in order to succeed or, to thrive. When in actuality, we're not thriving on the inside. And so it is so important before you burn out, like this is the thing, right? Well, I'm a family doc, you're a pediatrician. I'm all about, I was in integrative medicine. I'm all about root cause and I'm all about prevention. And I think the thing that I most want for women to begin to understand is that you don't have to freaking burn out or be on the edge of suicide like I was
Yep.
to realize that something needs to change.
Yeah.
Because for a percentage of people who be on the edge of suicide, they're not going to come back from that edge.
Yeah.
Right? When there's a solution, there's a solution, and or there's many solutions, right? It's not just one solution, there's many solutions. But part of that is being able to come back to, well, what is important to you? What is it? And then now, how can you prioritize, or who can help you to create the structure of bringing you back inside of what your values are? And then if you're not even clear what your values are, there may be too much noise going on in the mind for you to be able to even hear yourself, hear that internal self. That's kind of one of the things that I do, is I sort of help to remove some of those internal conversations, some of that noise in the mind that just keeps you from even being able to listen to the unconscious mind, to the unconscious values. And so now what we have to do is to be able to come back to base camp. Right in here. Right?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Because so I think of it kind of as a plane. Like, so a lot of women, they're like, where I am, I'm stuck. I hate this place. I don't like it. I know I should be out, but I got bills to pay, but I know it's draining me. I know this and know that. And so they're like, they know something needs to change. And they're like, I was thinking about doing this and thinking about that. And it's like, we're always in this mode of creation and never in this mode of elimination and saying, okay, what is it that, before we can do that, like you're trying to run a plane up there in the sky to wherever destination, and there's like debris and all this stuff on the runway. And so they're like, but wait, I want to do this. And I'm like, we can't even get there until we figure out, like, you have to learn to say no to some. You have to have some courageous conversations. You need to create some courageous boundaries. You need to, like, let's start. And that's the problem, because a lot of us, and in terms of your work as a business coach and all of that, right? I am not a business coach, but I think one of the things that was really important, learning the hard way, was saying that I know something needs to change. I know that this is potentially where I want to get to, is a little fuzzy, but being so hyper focused on the logistics and the how and the what of that, and not recognizing that I'm gonna build it on this. No, that's not gonna happen. And at some point it's gonna blow up in your face. So how about we do this first, and how about we start recognizing what are our real values versus our desired values? Because our real values are the things that we see. If you do a time audit and you look, and it's like, oh, I value my work, and I value this, and I value paperwork, and I value all of these things. And you're like, wait, that's not like what I feel like are my values. And so how do we start? Because that's where the tension lies. That's where the headaches are. That's where the body aches are, and all of those things that are the signs that something needs to change.
And here's what's interesting is that there's still a lot of us out there that are resistant to doing that deep work.
Yes.
There's still a
Yes.
lot of people out there who are resistant to doing what they call that woo-woo stuff, right? But here's the thing, if you don't do the woo-woo stuff, then you are going to be building a castle on shit.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
On its and guess what? Eventually you will smell it.
Correct.
You know, so it's you gotta like, we gotta like get over this. I already know that, or I already do that. And I get that I'm in the Bible Belt here in Atlanta, Georgia. And so
Yeah.
there's all that I'm going to pray about it. There ain't nothing wrong with pray about it. But
Yeah.
you know, you we say in 12 step sister programs, we say to pray is talking to God, but to listen is meditation.
Mm-hmm.
And so,
Mm-hmm.
if you really are going to hear the messages from higher power that of what's the next, and you got to listen. You got to listen. It's not going to be, you're not going to be sitting cross-legged, silent, and all of a sudden the voice is going to come to you. No, it's everyone. Everyone embodies the message of higher power.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone. I turn on the radio. I don't listen to the radio. I turn on Pandora and a song
Mm-hmm.
comes on and a specific message. And I'm like, oh, high five, God. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
we got to be listening to everything. You say, well, I want to make more money, or I want to be a millionaire, or I want to, and then someone comes to you, say, okay, well, you got to get your money conversation right. You got to deal with your unconscious money. No, that's not what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to
Yeah.
make money.
Yeah.
No, God just sent you the access to making money. You
Thank
trying to
you.
make money, and God says, I said, you know what? Here's a community of successful Black women who can help, and you have a mentor right here. No, I got this by myself. Are you kidding me? God just
Yes.
sent you that
Look.
access to making that money. So we have to be willing to do the work that needs to be done, the deep work, individually, inside a community, if we really want to go far. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think, we talked about this thing called I think it's in Glennon Doyle's book, Untamed, but she talks about this thing called the knowing, the space of the knowing. And I just love that word. I love this idea where it's like, she talks about sinking into that knowing, and that how so often, right, we are so scared of it because we know that the knowing is going to tell us the thing that we don't want to hear. And we're like, okay, nope, I got this to do. And so we distract ourselves so often, and that those spaces for reflection, even, the weekly time, whether it be in our community and everything, like to know that just getting there and saying, I'm focusing on me, and how scarce that is in our lives, and how easy it is to say nope. But this knowing, I think, is really important in terms of starting to feel like, do I feel warm? Like when I'm thinking about that, do I feel really cold and icky? Do I feel tight? And starting to recognize that our brains, right, they've been wired by the subconscious that you deal with, right? And all those rules that are like, we're trying to protect you, so do it this way and don't rock the boat, lady. Okay, we've got it under control. And
that's the conscious mind trying to protect you, but the unconscious mind knows the real answer.
Exactly. And so I think it's really about us being able to say also that bodily piece that I think we ignore, right? And that is speaking to us, right? When my leg, like after MS, it's like my legs tell me everything I need to know. Like they will tell me, lady, you better stop, sit down, go rest. And it's like, I don't want us to get to a point where we have a chronic illness and we have the weathering, we have the allostatic load, and then we have all of the chronic stuff that we have to deal with. Why can't we recognize like that what we're feeling is actually our body trying to kind of intercede and say, hey, this is where we should go. Please listen.
Right. Absolutely. Yo, me and you, we could be talking all day.
We trouble. I know.
So I'm just gonna say it right now. you're going to be back. Because we're not even close to done with this conversation, but we know that we both have things we got to go do.
Yes, very much so, very much.
Right? Because I would, we've had conversations that are 2 or 3 hours in the past. But we gotta leave the listeners wanting a little bit more. We gotta leave the listeners on a little bit of a cliffhanger, like, oh, we got to finish this conversation. So I think just sort of bringing it back home, just to kind of wrap it up, so we don't leave too much of an open loop.
Yeah.
What would you say? What would you leave listeners with, just in being community and being empowered as Black women, as Black people?
Yeah, I mean, I think of 4 different things. I think of, and anyone who knows me, anyone who's seen me teach, I am the alliteration queen. I will find a way. I will find a way to make everything start with 1 letter somehow. I don't know what's wrong with me. But I think the support is just that foundation, right? The support, which is both an accountability support, I'm gonna kick you in your butt, and I'm gonna help lift you. Yes. But then there's the self-discovery and self-awareness, right? So the awareness in that body, but the discovery of the values. What are my strengths? What are the things that everyone's been telling me is a deficit, but actually is my superpower? And then the other one I would say is the skill of self-preservation and getting us to that place where we truly are like, this is not a nice thing to do. This is a must do. And the last thing I would say is the strategy and being vision minded and purpose led. And so how can I say, this is where I want to be? I know it could be totally different, but that's what I'm feeling right now. How do I move back and say, what are the things I need to cultivate right now to get there, rather than doing reactive planning and being more inventive? And so I think those are really important pieces.
Yeah, and we have so much to even delve in on those pieces. So we're gonna plan to have a series of conversations. Yeah, that's what we should do. We should do a series. Yeah. So we're gonna do a podcast series in a moment. We're gonna plan that offline. But I just want to thank you, Dr. Omolara. I mean, this conversation was just the beginning, and I think we went deep, fast. And yes, that's kind of how we roll. But that's what this is all about. That's what Remapping Your Mind is all about. Having those real conversations, real people, the conversations that we don't always talk about in our community, but it's the things that we need to be thinking about in order to be lifting each other up so that we can transform and take it to the next level. Because we are the most resilient people on the planet. Amen. And we don't even know it. We don't even know it. So thank you so much for being on here. Tell our listeners how they can follow you, how they can connect with your community, please.
Yeah, I mean, you can just go to www.melaninmedicinemotherhood.com. Also on Instagram, I'm at melaninmedicinemotherhood.com, and that has all of the stuff, all the links that you can imagine in my bio. I do want to say that my pulpit, where I get a little feisty, is on Twitter at Dr. Omolara. So if you just want to have some fun, follow me over there.
I love to follow you on Twitter. When I'm on Twitter, I'm not on Twitter often, but when I am, I go like, what's Dr. Omolara talking about? Well, I just so appreciate you. This is the first of many combos on this show, and I look forward to them all. You all go check out Dr. Omolara, melaninmedicinemotherhood.com, and you need to be following her community. So thank you all for listening in today. Stay tuned for the next time we have her back on, and stay tuned for the upcoming trainings that we have at ReMapMyMind.com. If you want to learn about NLP hypnosis, that's where you go. But today, especially check out melaninmedicinemotherhood.com. All right, we will see you next week. Y'all take care. Have a great rest of the day and a great rest of the week. Namaste.